We live on an incredible planet, home to a mind-boggling variety of life forms, where every species is part of a finely balanced community of interconnected ecosystems. Humans have been changing nature for millennia, but now it's come to a point where we have to step in to actively manage our remaining native habitats. Sometimes that means controlling unwanted species. Sometimes it's to bring back species that we have lost. This week I'm going to explore some of Ireland's most spectacular wild places to find out if our interventions will be enough to save what we have left. Irish Oak Woodlands are very special places. They've been part of the Irish story for millennia. We don't have very many really old native woodlands left in Ireland, so places like this in Killarney are really special. Above we have ancient oak trees, and then we've got an understory of birch, holly and mountain ash, and the carpet of woodland herbs on the floor with flowers that feed pollinators like bees and moths. And then there's all the leaf litter on the ground with literally hundreds of different invertebrates. All of this provides the basis for the woodland food chain. But as well as all the indigenous plants and animals, there are other plants and animals introduced here by humans. Some of these are wreaking havoc in the woodland ecosystem, and if we want these woods to survive the invasion, it's up to us to intervene. There's a large population of red deer in Killarney National Park. Lately, the population has exploded, which is bad news for the precious woodlands. Tim Burkett worked for the National Parks and Wildlife Service for years and is passionate about preserving what's unique about this wonderful wild ecosystem. Tim, we've always had deer in Ireland, right? They're a native species.
Yes, we've had deer really since the end of the last ice age, in actual fact.
Okay.
But we have had also some relatively recent introductions in terms of that sort of time period.
So what are the new species of deer?
New species are the fallow deer, which are probably the oldest introduction, and the sika deer, which are quite recent, probably 200 years.
While red deer have been here for millennia, sika deer were introduced to Ireland by Lord Powerscourt in 1860. In just 150 years, the population has grown to 20,000. Here we have a deer exclosure. So this is to keep the deer out of the woods.
Yeah.
Why are the deer a problem in these woods?
Well, they can impact on these woodlands in a variety of different ways. Primarily, really, it's their grazing on seedlings, bark stripping of mature trees, browsing on all sorts of other plant life that exists in the woodland. It's all a very complex system, and if deer intervene at high numbers, then it can break down quite quickly.
There's a really big difference then between the openness here and all the growth that we can see behind the fence.
Yes.
The fence is necessary then?
The fence is necessary because it allows for a lot of plant species to actually recover in some cases and to actually grow in other cases.
And is it a big deal to keep these woods fenced off then to keep the deer out?
It is. It's really, really a very expensive operation. In some cases, it's the only way that we can actually protect a lot of these woodlands from overgrazing by deer.
So it's a big job, it's an expensive job,
yeah,
but it's really important for the survival of these woods.
Absolutely.
And then fencing is one part of the strategy. Are there other things that we need to do to keep these woodlands kind of healthy?
Well, other things obviously involve having to control the deer population.
That means culling deer, killing deer.
That actually means lethal control. So shooting them. It actually, there is no alternative. We really have to replace the top predators, which would have been in this country, would have been the wolf.
Okay, so we would have had wolves in the past that would have kept tabs on the size of the deer population. We don't have wolves anymore. We've hunted them to extinction.
Yeah.
So we have to do that role.
So we have to take the role of the wolf.
Wild deer are amazing animals. For most of the year, the males and females live separately. But autumn is mating season, and males have to fight for the right to mate.
We've got one male deer. It's a native red deer. He's got his harem of females here. And because it's just coming up the mating season or the rutting season, he's chasing off all the other young males, the yearlings.
Rutting means mating, which means even more deer. With no wolves, their natural predator, the population just grows and grows. We simply must do more to protect these woods from the damage that the deer are inflicting. But the deer are only one part of the problem in the woods of Killarney National Park. This is rhododendron, an exotic flowering bush introduced to Ireland by Victorian gardeners. Its big, waxy green leaves block all the light from the woodland floor, so it leaves no space for any of the native plants. International students come to Killarney National Park to volunteer with the Woodland Conservation Project. They spend the summer working with rangers to keep on top of the dreaded rhododendron.
So the rhododendron is it's established in the park here, and you just got to keep on top of it.
Exactly, yeah. So we've about 3,000 hectares of rhododendron throughout the park, so we've about 2,200 hectares of that then under active management. Those management areas, we have to go in every couple of years and do this kind of work and just prevent the plant from becoming dominant within those habitats.
This is a young rhododendron plant.
Yeah, this area actually is an area of second growth, so it's previously been treated, and what you're seeing now are just seeds that were previously in the ground starting to germinate and grow into new plants again.
And what do you do about it here?
We go to each individual plant and we need to remove the bottom leaves.
Okay.
And with the axe we just make a small incision in the bark just to get into the cambium layer of the plant on both sides. And then we apply directly with our spray gun here a little bit of herbicide. The herbicide itself is colourless, but the little blue dye indicates then to other volunteers that this plant has been treated.
Okay.
You can see it's direct application as well, so the herbicide doesn't affect anything else in the area.
And then bend it over, and that will kill off that bit of rhododendron.
And again, the bending over isn't really to do with the application, but more as an indicator that this plant has been treated.
Okay.
So when we're in an area of thousands of plants, I can take a look and see that somebody has already been here.
Okay, so on to the next one. And it's a lot of work. That's why you need these volunteers.
It is. There's 20 guys out with us now today, so it is very labour intensive. It needs this kind of effort to keep it under control.
Rhododendron just loves our mild, moist climate, and it's completely infested huge areas of the national park.
If the rhododendron wasn't kept under control here, by the time these oak trees come to the end of their life, there wouldn't be new oak trees to take their place. Effectively, we'd be killing off the whole oak woodland here.
Exactly. If rhododendron is left to get away and these places go unmanaged, effectively what happens is there will be no natural regeneration allowed to occur on the understory. These trees would eventually come to the end of their life cycle, and you'd be just left with a dense, impenetrable thicket of rhododendron.
In part 2, I'll be looking at efforts to tackle unwanted species in other parts of the southwest and finding out how reintroducing some species can help restore the balance. Wherever we go in the country, ecosystems are out of kilter. There are so many pressures and threats, some more visible than others. I wanted to meet some of the people who are working to help nature regain its balance. In West Limerick, there's a community group working hard to restore their local rivers to a healthy state by clearing away an invasive plant, the Himalayan Balsam.
Ah, there's loads of it here.
Yeah, there's plenty to keep us going for a bit.
The first job is to remove all the seed heads.
So we could be doing more harm than good here if we're letting these seed pods explode while we're clearing them away.
Yes, because we could actually spread them further if whenever you touch them, you encourage them to explode. If they only have a flower.
These invasive balsam plants grow really well along the riverbank in summer, but they die back in the winter and leave the soil underneath exposed and vulnerable to erosion.
The bank erosion is just one part of it, because all that soil that goes into the river will then go in, wash down and block or clog up the gravel where the salmon and the trout spawn. So it damages the banks, and it also damages the spawning capacity of the river.
They are a lovely flower. They were brought in as a garden plant around 1840 or something, they were brought into England and Ireland, and people they didn't know that they could spread in the wild first. They just had them in their gardens, and then they made their own way into the rivers.
So humans brought this pretty plant here, and now it's humans who have to put in the elbow grease to remove it from our riversides.
And you come out with other people on a regular basis clearing any patch of this that you can find away from the river?
Yes, we try to work from April until September, because it's important to do several visits at the same time of year, because as you may have seen, some of them are only this height, some of them are still very small, and some of them are already 2-3 meters. So you have to do visits at different times in the same season in order to get them all and not to have missed any that have already set seed.
When species keep spreading out so rapidly, we can use technology to get more people involved in tracking their spread. Anne Goggin of Limerick County Council has come up with a clever app which people are using to log the locations of problematic species.
There is some of the giant hogweed, right?
Yes. Giant hogweed is particularly a problem because if the sap comes in contact with the skin and is exposed to sunlight, it can cause really serious blistering and scarring. So it's a public health issue as much as a biodiversity issue.
And where does it come from originally?
It comes from Asia. It was an Asian plant brought in as an ornamental garden plant by the Victorians.
You can see why they brought it in. I mean, it is beautiful.
It's very striking when it's in flower.
And then how does the app work? So if I'm here, I'm having a walk and I see this and I want to log it with you guys or with the app.
The idea of the app was that it would be really quick and easy to use. So when you go into the app, you've got 3 options along the bottom: report, identify, or view, and that allows you to view a map of all the reportings that have been sent in so far.
And can I input this
You
now?
can. You can check to see if it's already in. There's a map in the app that shows you all the reports of the different species that have been received to date.
Okay.
So we can look at giant hogweed, and we have a few from around this area, maybe not necessarily this particular one. So if you take a photograph from within the app, if you're happy, you just use the photograph and then you just submit it. Now,
That is amazing. That's taken you about 3 seconds.
It's as simple as that.
That is fantastic. I'm going to have to get that. Okay. And I suppose in terms of tackling invasive alien species like this, it's important to have that link that the app provides between the citizens who are out, who are seeing this, who want to do something about it or help do something about it,
Yes.
and the authorities.
Absolutely, and part of our role is facilitating community groups to tackle it as well.
Brilliant. So this is like high tech to tackle the highly invasive species. It's brilliant.
Restoring the balance of nature can involve controlling the spread of invasive species, but sometimes we also need to reintroduce species that we drove to extinction. Once upon a time, there were eagles in Ireland. Just over 100 years ago, we killed off the last of them, but now we've been bringing them back again. I've come again to Killarney National Park to see the ridge where the last white-tailed sea eagles lived. It's still called the Eagles Rock. Dr. Alan Mee has been leading the eagle reintroduction project.
The process then of bringing them back in, how did you do that? How did you manage to reintroduce them?
We had, collaborators, some very fantastic people in Norway, around the Trondheim area in Norway, who were out there checking nests, because part of the licensing we could only take chicks from nests that had 2 chicks. So we left the pair in Norway with 1. We weren't taking all their chicks away to Ireland, so they still had a chick to rear. These are chicks that are size of a small turkey. They're quite big already. They're maybe 6, 8 to 10 weeks old, not that far off flying. And then we kept them in flight pens here. So they were really kind of homed in on the Irish environment, or Killarney environment here before they were released.
And when you brought the birds here, you just kind of bring them here and release them then?
Yeah, we found a location that was pretty quiet, so we wanted no human contact, even from the likes of myself, because we want them as wild as possible, Although the young birds, when we released them, we did feed them for a couple of months. We provided food because, in the wild, the parents would be doing the same for maybe a couple of months after they leave the nest. So to give them every possible chance of survival, because like most birds, their highest mortality is in their first year. Ultimately, we want these birds to survive to breed in Ireland.
Are they established now in different parts of Ireland?
Yeah, so we have about 10 pairs breeding now in Ireland. It's 5 pairs breeding in Kerry, 1 in West Cork, 1 pair in Clare, and a couple of pairs in Galway.
Fantastic. And these are huge birds, right?
Yeah, they're massive. They're all wings, and they're often described as a flying barn door.
A flying barn door.
I really wanted to actually see the white-tailed eagles, but I didn't have any luck in Killarney. So I went down to Garnish Island in Bantry Bay, where Alan suggested I might have more luck. Kevin the boatman sees them daily, and he was confident he could find them. This whole part of West Cork is so beautiful, and Garnish Island, near Glengariff, is a wonderfully wild and scenic location. Kevin knows the eagles well, but they weren't on their nest. Time was running out, and I still hadn't seen them. With the last of the daylight, Kevin suggested we try the other side of the island, where he had an inkling they might be.
Okay, you see the 2 of them right on the branch, and they're camouflaged beautifully. They fit in with the tree and the branch. They're sitting there one over the other. They're only after landing now, so there's no danger of them flying, because they're ready to roost for the night. So they'll stay on that tree tonight, and if not there, just in the other trees over here. But they're taking no notice of us. You can see them.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful.
This is just incredible. We've got to see the white-tailed sea eagles. This has seriously made my day. And you see the eagles out here all the time?
See the eagles every day, almost every day. When they have chicks, when they start in March and April, when they're hatching, and if the chick lived, they would be there all the time. At least one of them would be there all the time. But unfortunately, down through the years, we had accidents every year. Something happened, mostly the weather.
A chick that was born here in 2016 is doing well. And while he had to leave his parents' territory, he hasn't ventured too far away.
So Eddie, he's called Eddie the Eagle, and he is down at the moment, down near Sneem, down near Caherdaniel, and he's doing grand.
So Eddie is a white-tailed eagle chick that was born here in Garnish Island.
in Garnish Island.
And you still know where he is? You're keeping an eye on him?
Still know him. He's tagged. They all have a tag on their wings, so they're all numbered.
Okay.
So there's the male and the female are here, and they have stayed here, and they're really happy here because this particular area, fish is the main diet of the eagles. That's why they're so happy here, that everything is there for them.
Yeah.
So.
And are you delighted that they're here?
Oh, it's nearly part of my life now, because every day when I come out here with people, I tell them about the eagles, and if they're there, it's fantastic. But if they're not there, they'll be there the next day.
It's wonderful to see the enthusiasm of people around the country who are participating in projects to help restore the balance of nature. But I still wanted to understand the bigger picture of how ecosystems are struggling to adapt to the pressures of human activity. Professor Frances Lucy is Head of Environmental Science at the Sligo Institute of Technology. She's leading an environmental protection agency project focused on the intervention, eradication and control of invasive alien species.
Hello! This is lovely.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, thanks for coming to meet me.
Very welcome.
Brilliant. This is Loch Gillen in Hazelwood.
It is, yeah.
We often tend to think of nature being better left alone. Maybe that's not the case.
It's funny because it's not actually totally the case. Ireland has changed many times over the last 10,000 years since the end of the last ice age. And in a way, we've always been involved in the balance of nature. It's just that in the 21st century, a lot of our activities have become more intensive. You know, our farming, our industry, that puts pressures on ecosystems because of man's direct impacts, the food we need, the waste we produce, and all of this. We're part of nature, and we're actually the ones that are responsible to manage it. So we can't just say, leave it alone. Leave it alone, let it do its own thing, because our biodiversity and our natural systems are under a lot of pressure.
Do you think that there is much hope for restoring the balance in nature?
I do. I would always be hopeful, because if we give nature a chance to restore itself and we work to help it in that restoration, whether it's a case of putting back the natural river, the sinuosity in a river channel from a channel that's been straightened, or whether it's a case of replanting an oak woodland. Of course, it's not going to be 100% natural, and it will need some intervention from us, but it can help to develop a natural system where you have the highest opportunity for diversity.
Wherever we are in the country, there are still pockets of wonderful special habitats.
These woods are an incredible tapestry of life. There's species here that have been living together in harmony for millennia. And just like so many of our wonderful wild habitats, it's high time we start to appreciate and protect them, and to restore the damage that we've unleashed, and give nature the chance to flourish again.